Okay, so welcome everybody. Today we are going to go further with Excel, tables, formatting, and collaboration. Before we get started, I would like to go over a few controls. Down on the bottom of my screen, we can see the chat box. In there, you can go ahead and put in any questions you may have and go ahead, hit the little paper airplane to send your message and we will see it. Of course, this is a smaller group and we are on a Teams meeting. So if we do have any questions, we can also use the raise our hand feature to go ahead and ask any questions. If you would like to turn on live captions, that will be found underneath the three dots. If you go ahead and select the three dots, you can go ahead and turn on live captions and you will see those in real time. So from here, we're going to go ahead, go further with Excel, tables, formatting, and collaboration. So my name is Susan. I will be your presenter today, and I am here with Jeff Rowe. He's going to help me with any questions you all have today. Today, we're taking Excel a little further. This session is meant to be an intermediate course where we will go further, learning to format spreadsheets and work with data. Excel learns your patterns, organizing your data to save you time. Easily create tables in your spreadsheets and use modern functions. With new charts and graphs, Excel helps you present your data in compelling ways. Easily create forecasts to predict trends with just a click, and you can share your workbook with others and always work on the latest version in real-time collaboration to help get work done faster. From here, we're going to go ahead into the demonstration. So we're going to look at table formatting here. So table formatting is a quick way to format and filter data. This option is best used for smaller data sets. So if I go ahead and select into any one of these cells here, I'm going to go ahead and select Insert. We're already there. Under Insert, we will find the option for Table. If I go ahead and select Table, it automatically sees where my table is. So I can go ahead and select OK. And here we can see it automatically turned it into a table for me. We can also see at the top, the Table Design tab is popped up for me. But if I click off of my table, we will see my table data ribbon has disappeared. I go ahead and select back onto my table and my table ribbon will be back. Okay, so from here, we're going to look through the table design ribbon. At the top left-hand side, we have the option to go ahead and name our table. I'm just going to keep this as a simple title and call it sales. Underneath it there, we also have the resize table. If I go ahead and select resize table, I can go ahead and select a portion of my data and it will allow me to resize my table. And if I want to, of course, I can always bring it back to full size, or I can always just hit undo. Next to there, we have the options. We have a pivot table, which will be another course. We can also do remove duplicates. If I go ahead and select remove duplicates, it's going to ask me what kind of duplicates I'm looking for. I can go ahead and select where I want to see these duplicates might be. So if I go ahead and select OK, we can see it did find one and it has removed it for me. I can select OK. I'm just going to go back and undo that real quick. Back into our table design here. Underneath there, of course, we have the option to convert the range if we want to bring our table back to a normal range. Honestly, no for now. Next to that, we do have insert slicers, which is also gone through on the pivot tables course. Next to slicers, we have export. What this does, it will take your table and bring it to a SharePoint list. We'll go ahead and continue down the table design ribbon here. It's kind of in the middle where our table style options are at the top. We have our header row. Here we can see our header row is turned on, and that is the dark blue row at the top here. If I go ahead, uncheck that header row, we can see my header row has disappeared. If I go ahead, recheck it, it will bring it right back. Underneath that header row, we have the option for a total row. If I go ahead, select the total row here, we can see at the bottom, it gave me the total of the last column for gizmos. I'm gonna go ahead and scroll down a little bit. And let's see if it'll let me zoom in and make it a little bigger. There is a drop-down box that's kind of next to my cell. It might be hard to see because it keeps wanting to go smaller. If I select that drop-down box here, we can see it does give me some other options. So if I didn't want to do the total and maybe I wanted the average, for example, or maybe I just want to know like the max, or if I even just want to count the numbers in the row. I'm going to go ahead and bring that back to sum. So we can see I have many options to select from on the drop-down. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and zoom back out a little bit here. Bring my table back to the top and over. Okay, underneath the total row, we have the option for banded rows. I can go ahead and deselect, and you can see it removes all of our colors from our table here. I can go ahead, reselect banded rows. It will bring them all back. If I select first column, it's going to bold everything in my first column. Last column will also bold everything in my last column. I'll go ahead and uncheck those views. And the last one, they give me banded columns. So I have the option to customize my Excel sheet in different ways here. Up at the top right side next to first column, we will find our filter button. If at any time we want to remove the filters from our table, we can go ahead and select the filter button, or we can select it to put the filters back. Next to the tables, we have our table styles here. If I go ahead and select the drop down for table styles, we have lots of styles we can select from. So I can easily go ahead and change the colors if I prefer to have a different color, a different layout, lots of different designs for me to go ahead and choose from. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and scroll back down to the bottom here a little bit. And I want to talk a little bit more about my total row. If I go ahead and select this total row, I'm going to go ahead and Control C. I'm just going to paste it in another cell. As we can see, it doesn't bring my formula over there with me. It just brings the total, and it brings the formula of that last column here for me. Just going to go ahead and undo that. Nope, one too many. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and go back into my total column here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag it to the left here. I'm going to show you. You'll notice my mouse changes to a couple of crosshairs. If I go ahead and drag this to the left, we can see it starts to give me the sum for every one of my columns. And it changes for every column, as if I click on one of those, we will see it changes the formula. So we can see this one goes for gadget. The one before that will be doodad. As we can see, it changes it for each one. I also want to show you another way to resize our table here. Within the total row, there is a blue little corner. Let's see if I can zoom in a little bit. There's a little blue corner here. You'll also notice when I take my mouse over the corner, my mouse will have two arrows. This lets me know I can make my table larger. I could drag it down and I could drag it to the right. So this way, if I need to add more columns and rows, I can easily just make my table larger without having to recreate my table. But I can also do this for making it smaller. So if I wanted to take my table up and remove some of that data out of my table, we can see it will do that for me as well. I'll go ahead and bring my table back out. Has there been any questions so far? Is everyone doing okay? No questions? Okay, perfect. If you do have any questions, feel free to ask.
One thing I wanted to point out, Susan, I don't know if people are following on the web version on our logging in through office.com. On the ribbon bar, there is a drop down arrow towards the right-hand side that then will display everything you're showing here. I noticed when I logged into mine, it wasn't.
Yes, the caret on the right-hand side here, if you hit the drop-down button, there's probably going to be a button. It may be a similar writing. I'll do show only tabs and it'll look like this. If I go ahead and select the tab, if I hit the caret, I can go ahead and always show the ribbon. This will be the same in the web version.
Yeah, thank you for clearing that up.
Oh, you're welcome. Okay, so I want to look at finding the total between a couple of columns. I'm going to go ahead and scroll back up to the top here, and I'm going to go ahead and insert a blank column here. I'm just going to go ahead and select insert. Now we can see it gives me another column, but maybe I want to know what these two columns before it is, the sum of these two. I'll go ahead up to the right top here. I can select the drop down, or I could just select the E. It will go ahead and sum those for me. But at the same time, we can see it did sum every one other items, every other row in that column for me. So I didn't have to go back and do it for every row. So from here, we would look a little bit into the conditional formatting. Was there any questions on tables before we move on to the formatting? Okay. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Okay. So here we're going to look a little bit in conditional formatting. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to go in the column that says above the median. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to highlight this column here. For this one, I'm going to go in and I want to go under the Home tab. And we're going to have conditional formatting here towards the right-hand side and the top kind of in the middle. There's going to be a drop down here. It has some colors next to the conditional formatting to help us find it. In here, I want to go ahead and select the highlight cell rules, and then I want to look for greater than. I'll go ahead and select that. As we can see, it already gave us some predetermined number that it gives us an idea of what we can search for, but I can also change my number if I wanted to. So here we can see it gave me 3 numbers that highlighted in red. But since these are good numbers, I'm going to go ahead and change these to green. But if I want to go with a higher number, maybe it's like a grade, for example, or just something else, I can go ahead and change that to a different number. So maybe I want to know, what percentage is higher, or how much supplies I'm ordering, or if someone's doing good on a report. Many different ways to filter that out. I'm going to go ahead and bring this back down so we have a few numbers that are highlighted. Let's select OK. From here, I'm going to go ahead into above average. I'm going to go ahead and highlight the column above average. And we're going to go ahead into my conditional formatting. And I'm going to go into top bottom rules, and we'll select above average here. For this one, we're going to look at more of the custom formatting. So I'm going to go ahead and select the drop down arrow, and I'm going to select custom format. In here, we can see I have lots of different options I can go ahead and change. So the first option, as we can see, we have some fonts, some font styles, some sizes. If I want to underline, we have strike through options here. My color is automatic, so if I want to, I can go ahead and change the color of my font. If I change it to something, it might be hard to read, so I'll try and put something that's not too hard. Next to the font, we have border options. In here, this allows me to change the border of my cells. So I can go ahead and select any of these borders, which I know they might be a little hard to see. Underneath the borders, I can select a border color. So I'm going to go ahead and grab kind of a dark color. And then here we have outline right in the top middle. And that blue is going to be hard to see. See if I can get a bright color. Oh, that's too bright. Okay, I know these colors are going to be hard to see. They're kind of in the middle here with the text, where the text demo is. But in here, it gives you a preview of kind of what your cell would look like. But I'm going to go ahead and change the color since we have, see, I think that one was orange. Try and put a green. Okay, and then we have the fill option. In here, I can go ahead and select what color I'd want to put in my cell, what color I'd like to fill it. So I'm just going to grab this light blue here. At the bottom, we can see the sample of the color the cell will be. Underneath the colors, we do have fill effects and more colors. So if you wanted to go ahead and change the effect of how the cell looks, you have fill effects. Up on the top right-hand side, we also have pattern colors and pattern style right underneath of that. So maybe if we are using this color blue for a couple different formulas, maybe I want to put a little bit different design in there to break it up. And I can also put another color within that. So it'll kind of change my color a little bit. If I go ahead, select OK, we will see my cells have changed. I'll select OK one more time and I'll move my mouse here. As we can see, it now changed the colors of my cell, as well as added some little gradients, some different colors for our numbers here. Under the last one here is color scales. I'm going to go ahead and select my color scales. And here we go under conditional formatting. And under here, we want to look for the color scales. In here, we have lots of different options that we can select from for which kind of color scale we'd like to use. And I'm just going to go ahead and select one from the middle. And here we can see it breaks up my numbers with the different colors. It kind of pre-selects some colors or numbers for us for what color it wanted to be. Has there been any questions on conditional formatting? From here, we're going to look at the data validation. I'm going to go ahead under valid 2 here. And at the top here, we have our formatted, unformatted options here. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to look to accept only whole numbers greater than 0. So I'm going to go ahead and select my cell here, B3. From here, I want to go into the data ribbon here. And from here, I want to go to data validation. It's kind of towards the right-hand side. You will see a couple of squares with a checkbox as well as a circle with a line through it. We'll go ahead and select the drop-down menu. And then I'll go ahead and select data validation here. The first tab we're on is going to be our settings tab. For this one, I want to go ahead and allow whole numbers, which it's already set for me. I want to go ahead and keep the ignore blank checkbox. And then we're going to have data greater than. And then my minimum number needs to be set as 0 because I want a number greater than 0. And if this cell were part of a formatted range, of course, we can select this option as well. Next to the settings, we have our input message, which I'll show you on another one of these validations here in a moment. I'm going to skip this one for this particular one. And then we have our error alert. In here, I want to go ahead and say show alert after invalid data is entered. If I want to change my style, I'd want to go in here and change my style, but I'm going to keep that as stop. And then my title is going to be error. Underneath here, we want to go ahead and select the message. This message is going to help the user of this Excel sheet understand what needs to be put into this cell and why they're getting the error. So I'm going to go ahead and put in a message. Please enter a number greater than 0. And then I'll say OK. Okay, so I'm going to go back into my cell here. So if I put 0, let's see if it does. Perfect. So here it's going to say it's giving me an arrow to select a number greater than 0. I could say retry and it'll allow me to put another number in there. I can say cancel, or I can also look for help. If I go ahead and select retry, I'll go ahead and change this. I'll just put a number 2 and select enter. And we can see we did not get the error. For the next one, we're going to look at accept dates with a warning for 2001 and earlier, or 2021, sorry. It might actually be 22 on this demo. We'll see. Yeah, it's going to be, this one's going to be for the date range of 2002, January to December. And so in here, I'm going to go into box P4 here. And of course, we want to go back into our data ribbon, back into our data validation tools, and select data validation. For this one, we're going to be on our settings here. And in our settings, we want to go ahead and select this to date because I'm looking for a date range. In here, we can keep this checkbox, ignore a blank check. And I want my data to be between because we're looking between dates. And then my start date is going to be 1, let's see what that 1/1/2022. And this is going to be 12/31/2022. From here, we're going to go ahead into the input message. In here, this one we're going to also keep blank. It's going to be the next one. I'm going to show you the messages. For this one, we're going to go ahead and place an error. This one, I want to do a warning style. And we're going to go ahead and place a title. So this is going to be entry date. And then for our error message, date is not in the current year. Is this correct? So this way, when someone looks at it and they put their date in there, they can see if this is the right date or not. Then go ahead and select OK. So I'm going to go ahead and put a date, just a random date. Let's see. And then I'll go ahead and hit enter, and we have the warning because it's not between the dates we have selected. So we'll go ahead and say no, because this is not a correct date. So in here, we'll go ahead and change this. It should work there. Perfect. And we didn't get the error because we have the date between the date range. From here, we would want to look for the next formula is going to be accept only yes or no without a separate list. So for this one, it's going to be more of a logic. So I'm going to be into my data. And we're going to go into our data validation tools here. Go back into my settings. In here, I'm going to go ahead and change this to a list. This one's going to be more of a list. We have our ignored check blank box. We have our data that's grayed out because it's a list. And this one is going to be a yes, no option. So here I'm going to go ahead and type in yes. And of course, we do need our comma because it will separate to show that this is going to be a list. Next one we're going to do is the input message. For this one, it's going to be titled conference room. And then I'm going to go ahead and place a message in here. Is a room required? Select yes or no from the dropdown. And then we're going to go into our error alert tab. In here, I'm going to go ahead and keep this as a style. I'll go ahead and title this conference room. And then we have our error message. We do want to let them know to enter yes or no. And we'll go ahead and select OK. In here, now we will see we have a drop-down box next to our cell, letting me have the option to go ahead and select. But you can also see there now is a note letting me know what I need to do here. It's asking me the question, do I need to get a conference room for the event that's about to happen? So I can go ahead in here, I can type in the information, and if I just say maybe, if I hit enter, we can see it gives me my error. So I'd want to go ahead and select the yes or no. So I can go ahead and delete my maybe. I can also go down to my Dropbox and I can go ahead and select my option here. From here, we're going to look at accept only items on a separate list. So for this one, we're going to go back into our data ribbon and our data validation tools here on the right-hand side. We'll select data validation. In here, this is going to be a list, so we need to go back into our settings. We're going to go ahead and allow for a list. And of course, we have our ignore box. We have our data blank grayed out, so it's not going to be between. But we do need to select a source. So what I'm going to do is on the left-hand side of my list here, I have a list of items under peripherals. So I can go ahead and select those items. So what this is going to do is it's going to use those items I selected and place them in a drop-down box for me to be able to select from. From here, of course, I want to go ahead and put my input message. And keep in mind, this one can be blank if you would like to as well. I'm going to go ahead and type in the peripherals. And then my input message, I'm going to say, please select an item. And then, of course, we're going to need our error alert. So for this one, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to change this to information. And then, of course, we do need our title here. So this one is also going to be peripherals. And then, of course, we want our error message. So the error message is going to be, you did not choose from the list. Is this intentional? Okay, perfect. And then we go ahead and select OK. Here we can see we have our drop-down list again. We see the arrow right next to our cell. We can see we have our peripherals little note here saying, please go ahead and select the item. Of course, I can go ahead and type in something that's not on this list here. So let's just go ahead and type in board, for example. Of course, we're going to get our error. We'll go ahead and close out my error. And then I can go ahead and select my dropdown. So I can go ahead and select which item I would like for my dropdown. As we can see, when we select the dropdown, it does give me the same items from the list on the left-hand side to be able to select from. So from here, I'm going to go ahead and show you a little bit with some validation circles. So when copying values, i.e. copying data without its formatting, and into a validated cell, the data validation is not checked. Also, with the warning and information options, data that does not meet the requirements can be entered into this formatted cells. Okay, so the first one I'm going to show you is I'm just going to highlight this word dog hair. I'm going to go ahead and copy that. I'm just going to copy it so we can see it's not the cell that's copied, it's just the word. And I'm just going to go ahead and paste it here. As we can see, it's ignoring my rules when I just go ahead and paste that into a couple of cells. It's not really giving me any warning. So sometimes things can sneak into our cells where we have formulas and we don't always know that it happens. And so if I go back up into my data validation, in here we can say circle invalid data. Here it will go ahead and circle my data for me. So it knows I need to go in here and I need to change my information. And of course, if I want to just leave it there the way it is, because I don't want to make a change, I can go ahead back into my data validation tools and say clear my validation circles. So I can go ahead and place my circles and remove my circles if I feel the data is correct. But if I were to go ahead and copy the cells here on the left-hand side of my green box, and I just copied them over the top here, we can see it removed all of my formulas and all of my data validations just by copying the cells over the top of another set of cells. Okay. Has there been any questions on data validation? Okay. From here, we're going into share and collaborate. I'm going to go ahead and select my shares worksheet here. In here, I want to go ahead and show you how to share a workbook. On the top right-hand side, we will see a share button. I believe that button also lives here under the file. So you can do this in either one of the places here under the file where it says share, or at the top right-hand side where you see the share button. I'll go ahead and select share. In here, it's going to give me several options. You may not see the share with anyone link. A lot of times organizations won't see that one, but you may see the one where you can go ahead and share within your organization, share with people with existing access, as well as share with people with specific people. So this way, only the intended users will have access to the workbook. Underneath those options, we have other settings where I can change it to can edit or can view, so they cannot make edit changes. So maybe this is a sensitive workbook that I can't really let anybody make changes to, so I'd want to go in here and just say that they can only view it. I can also set an expiration date, because maybe this information is going to be changed or updated within a week, or it maybe become invalid because it's a year-end report and you won't need it